Hello everyone, my name is Bianca Limas, and the restorative practice I chose to do my project on today is victim offender mediation. What is the definition of victim offender mediation? Victim offender mediation is a restorative practice in which a victim of a crime or their family members, in the case of the victim being deceased, meet with the offender who committed the crime in person in a safe, controlled environment. Victim offender mediation has been proven to work quite well for certain victims who have suffered from being violated or being the target of violence, due to a victim offender mediation opening a new path of healing and empowerment for the victim. Victim offender mediation works by placing the offender and the victim in the same room to discuss events that had occurred between them. Why is victim offender mediation important? Victims who attend victim offender mediation may begin the road to healing. In victim offender mediation, the offender, victim, or victim's family, in the case that the victim is deceased, and the mediator are placed in the same room. There, the mediator leads a process and allows the victim and the offender to communicate one-on-one with one another. The victim is free to ask questions such as why they were chosen for the crime, and also inform the defendant how the crime that was committed against them has changed the trajectory of their life. In turn, the defendant has the opportunity to pitch in their 2 cents, take accountability for their crime, and apologize. Having the chance to speak to the one who had wronged them can take the weight of the crime off the victim's shoulders, which could set them in the right direction of healing after having the questions that may have been eating at them answered. The hopeful outcome of this restorative practice is to give the offender and victim both peace of mind and help them cope with the events that had occurred. Advantages of victim offender mediation, Part 1. Victims who attend victim offender mediation can feel empowered. By meeting with the offender in person, the victim is given the chance to speak their mind and take back their life in a way. They are free to ask the offender questions, giving them their voice back. During victim offender mediation, victims are also able to browse and settle on a resolution with their offender, whether that be financial compensation or something like having the offender serve community hours. Victim offender mediation can also be considered empowering for victims. The reason for this circumstance is no longer do they have to sit on the sidelines, along the lines of how they had done in courts, and wait to be asked tailored questions. In victim offender mediations, victims are capable of speaking their minds and reclaiming their silenced voices. Advantages of victim offender mediation, Part 2. Victim offender mediation forces the offender to view the victim as a human being and not an object. At times, offenders do not view the victims as humans but as objects, as mentioned earlier. Being faced with the victim and hearing their stories and how the crime the defendant committed impacted their life can make the offender open their eyes and realize the weight of their crime, and also realize that the victim is human like they are. Victim offender mediations aren't only beneficial for victims but can be for offenders too. Just like victims are able to speak their minds in victim offender mediations, so are offenders. In victim offender mediations, offenders are given the opportunity to shine light on their perspective of the crime. Offenders can list the reasons for why they had committed the crime in hopes of the victim possibly understanding, or to answer questions that may have been plaguing the victim. Advantages of victim offender mediation, Part 3. Offenders benefit from participating in victim offender mediation because it looks good to the judges. By participating in this approach, offenders show the court and judges that they are attempting and willing to take steps to reclaim their lives by taking accountability for their actions and crimes that they committed. Meeting one-on-one with their victims can also help offenders move on from this dark patch of their life, just like it can with victims. Victims who partake in victim offender mediation have been known to experience many psychological benefits. According to studies, a study involving 323 victims found that 66% of victims who were referred to mediation but did not participate remained upset afterwards, which compared to 53% who participated offender mediation were feeling much better after. In the same study, it was found that a mere 11% of victims who participated in victim offender mediation continued to hold the common fear of being re-victimized, compared to the staggering 31% of victims who refused to participate in the mentioned restorative practice. Advantages of victim offender mediation, Part 4. Victim offender mediation gives the offender the chance to make amends for the crimes they committed. Through a victim offender mediation, offenders meet with those that they have harmed. There, the defendant and victim can discuss the ways the defendant can make amends to the victim. Making amends with the victim can be done through talking or other ways. Another option that offenders may be given to make amends to the victim is to pay compensation to the victim. The amount would then be discussed between the two, the offender and victim, until something is agreed upon. Victim offender mediation gives victims the chance to obtain closure and helps with integration from their traumatic memories as well. Based on studies conducted by several sources, participating in victim offender mediation has been shown to help further along the healing process for victims who discuss their feelings with their offenders, since the victims begin to feel complete after hearing and knowing the full story of what had happened to them and why. Victim offender mediation also decreases the chances of the offender re-offending. Advantages of victim offender mediation, Part 5. Victims who meet one-on-one with their offenders, who may have felt responsible for what had happened to them, may be able to surrender their guilt. For example, a young woman who has gotten raped may believe she was taken advantage of because she chose to go to a club or wear provocative clothing. It's important to remind victims that no matter what had they done, whether they had been walking around nude or showing off expensive items they have bought, they are not to blame for being taken advantage of. The offender is. By participating in victim offender mediation and getting to understand the offender's and the mediator's point of view, the victim may come to realize that they are not to blame for what had occurred. Although there are many advantages to victim offender mediation, there are also disadvantages of victim offender mediation. Victim offender mediation does not work for every victim. Every person is different, meaning nobody copes in the same way. Thus, victim offender mediation isn't suitable for all. While victim offender mediation may help some victims heal, it may worsen it for other victims. Victims who have suffered attempted murder, kidnapping, and armed robbery, for example, have shown to accept victim offender mediation quite well, while those who have fallen victim to offenders who are sadistic or sociopaths have not. Another con of victim offender mediation is the offender and victim safety is not promised. How can victim offender mediation be improved? Although I believe that victim offender mediation is the best restorative practice there is that's out there and the most beneficial to both offenders and victims, there are a few things that I believe that can be improved. For example, in the event that either the victim or offender refuses to take part, I believe the intended mediator should try to do everything in their power to convince either party to participate if the mediator truly believes it would be in the best interest for the two of them. For example, I believe if they think that it would help the victim and offender move on from their past and help them heal, I believe that they should push it more on them and help convince them to participate. And in between each attempt to sway the victim or offender to participate, I also believe they should be forced into counseling, in this case the victim and the offender, to determine the exact reasons why they don't want to interact with one another, and to also find a way to combat this and get over the feelings, and to help realize that this mediation may help them improve in the future. I also believe if either the victim or offender is visibly anxious, mediators should bring in trained, well-behaved animals to soothe nerves. What leads me to believe this that service animals, whether it be dogs, rabbits, or horses, and so on, should be implemented in victim offender mediation is to help both parties feel more comfortable. It's because service animals have been proven to not only ease those with physical disabilities, but people who struggle with mental disabilities and emotional issues such as trauma. That's why I believe if you bring in, like, say, a trained um, dog that has been trained um, in service, I believe that it would be useful to bring it into comfort either the offender or victim, whoever is feeling anxious, and I feel that would be able to help them talk and communicate with one another better and soothe any nerves.